Hello and welcome to another fucking awesome episode of I'm kind of doing this a little bit more like I do my other podcasts. This is everything I don't want you to know. And last week we took a little break from universal law and hermetic principle to talk about weather control, which is absolutely a real thing. It's been a real thing for a long time. And and forgive me, I'm still recording out loud outside because it's so nice out here in Orange County, and but I do have the occasional helicopter or plane or whatever, but it's a relatively focused microphone, so hopefully it won't disturb our experience too much. So, the universal laws. One second. I wanted to get my book anyway, and the helicopters were flying like right overhead, so figured I'd just grab my book. At this point, we've done a lot of the 13 universal laws, as I like to teach them. For those of you who want to better understand, essentially where this information is coming from, there is the Hermetic principles. Hermes, Her Magistrate. He is a brilliant philosopher who put forth these 7 principles. And the 7 principles line up almost perfectly with the universal laws taught in Kabbalah and many other cultures all around the world, with one exception, the law of mentalism and the law. The Hermetic principles, there's only 7, there's 12 universal laws, so there's more things that are covered within the universal laws, like what we're going to talk about today, the law of action, or the law of inspired action, more to the point. And we'll talk about the difference. But first, I want to just talk about these combined 13 universal principles, for me. But, I mean, this is the nature of the universe. I really do think that the difference between me and a lot of people out there exploring spiritual information is that they have a hard time taking this as literally as they need to. There is balance within all things to this real world we're living in, and the principles of the universe, but the principles of the universe don't lie, and they never change. And just because we've created a world that is operating seemingly different, because we are under the impression that things are seemingly different than what they really are, we're disconnected from the flow of our reality, and that's what I want to get into, today with the law of inspired action. And I just want to start by talking about these laws that we already talked about, just recapping them. So for me, for my list, which is this amalgam list, the first law is the law of one. The law of one ultimately just describes every single thing, every single molecule, every single piece of consciousness on Earth and everywhere else is all ultimately one thing. It is all a infinite splitting apart of one universal thing that ties us all together, ties it all together. The second law or principle for us here is the law of mind, which we spoke about. Everything here in our reality, in our physical reality, is a concept. A physical reality is a concept. Consciousness comes before form. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The idea for both, right? So you're one with everything, and everything is a mind, okay? On episode 3, official episode 3, we learned about the law of polarity. The law of polarity states that everything is dual. Everything is essentially half of God, if you will. And God, not the guy in the robe, God is the infinite toolbox that we all live in. The infinity of consciousness that we all come from, the well of consciousness. We have essentially chosen a form, and we are only half of God because we are in a configuration outside of the nothing, the inert, empty space that we live in, the nothing that everything comes from. We've talked about this before in sort of the law of one. In the beginning, there was nothing. There was just an oblivion. And then one day, that nothing had a thought, but connected to that nothing eternally is sort of the rest, the slumbering being and the thinking being. And we are forever part of the polarity because of that as well. There's a slumbering and there's a rise and a fall. And as any sort of physical thing, we can't represent the all, the nothing. However, because of polarity, we can balance ourselves by friends who, offset our energies, or girlfriends and boyfriends that offset our energies, family members that offset our energies, or by becoming very conscious of what our energies are and putting in the work to offset our own energies ourselves and take it to that next level of balance. So polarity is really what teaches us the disarray that we're in on planet Earth. The left, right, all these ideas of a Democrat, Republican, a two-party system. It's awful. It plays to the worst part of our nature. Not that it's fundamentally bad, but it brings out the polarity and ends up having essentially the one mind of God fighting with itself, unable to arrive at a balanced answer that would be something more in the middle, the balanced answer that we get with the right relationship, the right friendship, the right job, something that is able to balance our energies. So, moving on to that, our energies, the fourth law is the law of vibration. And the rule is everything vibrates and everything has a very unique vibration. I really don't believe that there's not like a duplicate of anything, because it would just be sort of wasteful from the intellect of the universe. Even when you see twins, they end up sort of polarizing against each other in various ways to be uniquely different from one another. If you go and investigate various studies on twins and stuff like that, you can see interesting things like that happen. But everybody is unique. They're all unique. All the twins are unique. Everybody's unique. But every vibration has a sort of perfect relativity to it. And relativity can act in lots of ways. You can think of this as just like a complete opposite or partial opposites. That's why they say you're the polar opposite of me, and then other people say, oh, we're kind of opposite in some ways. In some ways we're similar. These are people who can figure with you in some ways. Some ways you guys are like on the same page, and then some ways you guys are opposed to each other in the right sort of way where you've attracted one another, usually because you wish to observe a strength that they have, and they wish to observe a strength that you have. So they have an appreciation of some sort of strength, you might not even know what it is, and you have an appreciation of one of theirs. And you guys want to be around each other so you can admire each other's strengths and ultimately learn from each other and absorb some of that energy that you love so much. So, you got the law of vibration and the law of relativity. And forgive me if I'm getting any of these wrong. Most of these, except for mentalism, is a principle. I'm sorry. Most of them are laws, because there's 12, except for mentalism. But some of these are principles of Hermeticism and laws of the universe. I just combine them together because the information is very similar, and it's a good way to sort of prove how there's only so many ways to think about this universe, and most people are saying the same thing. And you can combine Kabbalah and Hermeticism, and Kabbalah is fucking universal with a shitload of other ones. It all comes back around to this. I mean, the Bible is coded with so much of this information, if not all of it. I'm just like, I've seen plenty of it brought out by the right people who understand the scriptures better than I do. But I don't think I've necessarily seen every single universal law pulled out from there. But we talked about Job a couple weeks ago, when we were talking about the perpetual law of perpetual exchange of energy. So Continuing on past the law of vibration, the law of relativity, you've got the law of gender. And now this one's a great one to talk about, coming off of this. So you've got the inert God and you've got the thinking God. And this creates a dual of energy that most people know as masculine and feminine. And what masculine basically can be metaphorically represented as that sleeping God that's like, everything is at rest, everything is as it is and safe, right? And then there's change and thought and creativity and sort of optimism, progress, which is more the feminine energy. Traditionally speaking, and this isn't for everybody or every person, but the more masculinely minded is keeping the place the same, protecting the woman, protecting the space. And then the woman may go into the, or the more feminine energy person may go into the space and be creative within that space, make meals of food that is brought home, make a space really pretty. Now, the mistake is that we think that only girls can be feminine and only boys can be masculine. The reality is everybody has both, and it's in different mixtures for everybody. I'm a pretty feminine guy. I've been very drawn to more masculine women. Not to say that like the women that I'm into aren't like beautiful and feminine or capable of femininity, because I'm a pretty balanced guy and I'm capable of masculinity. So I like to find women who are sort of balanced in their masculine and feminine. But there are women who have a particular energy that like literally like intoxicates me. I love it. It's the energy that I need to balance my feminine energy. My girl and myself, we've both reported the same thing in our lives of being approached by gay people, being told I'm gay, but I'm totally into you, and like are you single? Like, could I take you home? And it was like the nicest compliment at the time, because it just seemed like an insane thing to happen. But now I understand actually why it happened. And like I said, it happened twice. And another funny, kind of thing, again, energetically, like before I knew any of these things, a lot of the girlfriends that I had when I was in middle school or high school or whatever, later in life, they came out as lesbians. They felt comfortable with me. And I think that is a testament to my more feminine energy that, spoke to them. And I look for some of these girls who have more masculine energy that speaks to me. So, I find the thing of like, gay and trans and like all the different, different stuff, like there's nothing wrong with, like anything that anybody wants to decide to do. But everybody should know that if they wanted to choose somebody of the other sex and like procreate or whatever, you could probably find somebody. I don't know why I knew that I would find somebody on some level, like I was straight enough, I guess, but I don't know. I don't even know if that's really right to say. I kind of think I just kind of did it because that was like, oh, the boys do this, so I did. I would consider myself non-binary. I didn't feel like a man or a woman. So I would say I kind of monkey seed, monkey dude, but I monkey seed, monkey dude my way into the type of women I would really like. And I do think the gay guy approaching my girl going, I'm gay, but like I am really into you, and like, would you be down? Like, I mean, it just demonstrates that there are different configurations of men and women for everybody. If you want one of the opposite sex, I think some people feel like it's not possible for them, and in the name of like sort of furthering humanity, and and I do love families, and I do love kids, and I like a war. I think kids make people better people, and and granted, you can adopt, and there's so many different things that can go on. So I mean, don't let me discourage anybody from anything, because they're fucking different strokes for different folks, and everybody's right to do whatever. But it is worth considering, just that there may indeed be somebody for you, because I've always said, like when people ask me when I'm gay, or not always, but at a certain point I started saying, well, you never know what tomorrow will bring. And that's really the reality. You never know what tomorrow will bring. You're a lesbian. You like these people. You like the. You never know who you may meet tomorrow, unless you're very close-minded to who you may meet tomorrow. In which case, it probably will continue to be whatever configuration of the thing that you're looking for or putting together for yourself. But we're going to get into some of that and how that goes and your divine action versus divine action. So that's the law of gender. Everybody's masculine and feminine in different parts, boys and girls. The last thing I want to say about that is it's just a reminder. It's like, we do want a matriarchy, but a matriarchy will be made up of men and women. Men and women who are balanced in their feminine and ready to come to the table, communicate, and be creative about solutions and ways forward, as opposed to what we have right now being thrust upon us. Lots of women who hold a completely masculine energy of holding the thing as it is, despite what they say, and that goes on whatever side. There's a few. Tulsi Gabbard is an exception, but they're helping the system be the system. And they're fighting like the men. They're not communicating better. We need better communicators. Donald Trump is a perfect example of this. Whether you like Donald Trump or you hate Donald Trump, he's not a great communicator. He is on some levels where he's entertaining and whatnot, but on the level of really being able to come down to a level and speaking a language that everybody can understand, and level with all people. There's certainly he has been demonized quite a bit, but he's had an inability to get it together with not putting his foot in his mouth sometimes. And the future, we will hopefully have some more empathetic voices and leaders who are better at communicating and bringing us together. But it doesn't just have to be men. It doesn't have to just be women. It doesn't have to just be gay men. I'm outwardly straight, but I'm non-binary. I shouldn't have to tell everybody that. My actions and who I am as a person, what I want to achieve, all those things, that should be able to do the thing, and everybody should be allowed to find that thing for themselves. But I do think the way we're taught, about gender and gender roles and things like that, that it makes us feel when we're not the normal standard cookie cutter, somehow we're fundamentally wrong, and that we don't fit in with God's plan or something like that, because completely, God's plan. I mean, that's a silly term to use, but we don't fit in with the plan of the universe. And I do think that, again, if you want the other side of the smorgasbord, there is some these lesbians found me and they were like, yeah, I like Jesse, and I like them. It was a match. And there are a lot of interesting matches in the world, and some people who like to dress a certain way, a little bit more like a tomboy and whatnot. There's a match for you. You don't necessarily have to change anything. There's somebody out there who's all about it. Be open to that. I feel like people it's I'm different, and we fall into all these sort of identity things, as opposed to realizing that we're really all different, and some people are just sort of masking their differences by going with the flow and being whatever. But yeah, man, there's nobody has to change, really, I guess is the thing. It's you don't have to change anything about anything. You just have to feel good about yourself. But if you want to change anything, if you want to get dressed in whatever fashion that you want to, and you're not hurting anybody else, fucking go forth and be merry. But I like babies, and I like a world where we have more of them. So I would encourage people to realize that you probably find a girl who you like, because I might have been gay myself. People always would think I was gay. But I don't know. It just seemed like I was a boy, so I was going to do the boy thing, and I learned how to do the boy thing. And I feel like some people just like don't want to learn to do the boy thing or don't want to learn to do the girl thing, and it doesn't come naturally to them, and that's okay. Like we get there over time in other ways, and there's so many lessons, and some people, I don't think they came here in this life to learn to be straight. Some people came to be gay, but I think we all eventually are coming to learn that we are masculine, we are feminine, and we can choose whatever. There is a perfect relativity out there for us. If we want a boy, if we want a girl, if we want a trans, whatever we want, the possibilities are there. So you don't actually have to close yourself off to any possibilities, which is, again, generally kind of what I say. It's like, I don't know. Who knows what tomorrow may bring? So don't close your mind about your sexuality. Be even more open-minded about what it really is and what it really means, and who might be right for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too in a second with inspired action. So then 2 weeks ago we did the law of perpetual exchange of energy, which basically says that things are always flowing, man. The waves come in, the waves go out. The waves come in, the waves go out. Your heart is pumping. You're breathing in, you're breathing out. You're eating food, you're pooping food. It's all a big breathing cycle. And part of that breathing cycle, which we're going to talk about today, is riding the waves, man, with the law of inspired action. Because it's, this is generally known as the law of action, but it's not too much action, because then you jump the wave and you miss, the part of it that you need to get on to ride the wave, or too little action and you don't get there in time and the wave leaves without you. So that essentially, in a nutshell, is the law of inspired action. It's about timing. Nothing happens, though, without action. So action is the law, but it's about timing your action. Okay? And realizing that inaction has consequences. Okay? In the word attraction is the word action. It's action. So the idea that you're going to be attracting wealth into your life, you're going to be attracting whatever, there is action being taken. It's not all, you're setting up the atra of action, which is essentially like, you could think of it as abracadabra of action. You're setting it up so that action will take place. That will bring things to action will come to you. But you take action to do that, whether it's action in your mind or action physically. You talk sometimes about the Goldilocks zone. If we're riding a wave, we've got the too hot is we jumped over the wave and we got kicked around by it and we didn't ride it. Or it's too cold and we didn't go anywhere. Just right, and we're riding the fucking wave, right? It's all really about getting balanced. I kind of wanted to teach you guys this really interesting analogy that it's an analogy, conceptualization, visualization that I've used in meditation to great effect. Thinking in terms of true balance on planet Earth is basically like imagining a long hallway. Okay, so you're looking down a hallway that goes on forever and forever and forever and forever. Somewhere down the middle of this hallway is essentially a bullseye. But it never comes, because this is just this hallway that goes on for forever. But because it's a hallway that goes on for forever, if we stand on the one side of it and we look all the way down this hallway that goes on for forever, and we take a dart and we try our best to throw it with perfect precision, mind you, and perfect power in the direction closest to balance, pretty much no matter what we do, we're going to be a little off. And eventually, on the slightly off trajectory, a little to the left, a little to the right, a little too high, a little too low, our dart will hit a wall. It will end up, if you draw a line down the middle of the room, on one of two polarities. let's say the masculine or let's say the feminine, right? So I throw this dart as far down the corridor, trying to be as balanced as I can. I'm still going to wind up somewhere on the left or the right. I'm never going to quite be able to hit the bullseye in the balance. And this says something, just about the world and calculated action. Calculated action where you just so happen to throw that dart in the perfect arrangement is somebody distracts you, tickles your shoulder, and you accidentally throw it like that. Or you think about something for a second, or you forget yourself, or you're really fucking in tune, you take a breath, you get out of the way, you connect yourself to the infinity of all things, and at the perfect moment, when you're breathing, when you're right, when you're ready to throw, you throw the arrow, and it actually does go on for forever, straight down the infinity cycle. This is what's happening when people reach flow states on fucking mountaintops, or Jimi Hendrix reaches a flow state on a concert stage, and he gets to a place where he can just he can do the thing perfectly because it's inspired action. The flow state leads you into a constant state of inspired action. The flow state of something like climbing a mountain puts you there through, well, if you're not in that flow state, you're going to die. Jimi Hendrix is getting there through a place of love and flow and relaxation. But ultimately, they're getting to the same place. The place of perfect balance where they're putting their hand in the right crevice in the rock, getting their hand to the right spot in the guitar, but in perfect flow, in perfect harmony with nature, with their breathing, with their reality. Now, because of the idea of I hope you can understand this idea of this long hallway and trying to throw the dart, normally speaking, if you're off just a little bit, because if you just think about it, if I'm just off just a little bit, let's say I get a little bit closer to the center and I cut it in half. And then a little closer to the center and I cut it in half. A little closer to the center and I cut it in half. A little closer to the center. I can keep cutting that half for forever. This is essentially a completely impossible task. And that is the infinity. It's always bending. It's always kind of reshaping. And eventually it gets to another octave, to another place where you won't even recognize the place that you came from before, which is some of the universal laws that we're going to be getting to in the future, law of rhythm and correspondence. Now, I wanted to talk about, we talked about how all is one. And all is one, everything fits together perfectly. Because of this perfect nature of reality, how everything fits together, it is a machine, that is functioning and breathing. If you keep jumping at the wrong spot of the wave, you'll never ride the wave. If you eventually learn to listen and wait and time it right, you can get on that wave. Now, doing this on a spiritual level is a little bit different because we're being led by our inspiration. Now, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I want to talk about things like simple things like pregnancy. What is it? Timing, right? There's ovulation. There's a time when the woman can get pregnant. The rest of the time, you're not going to really be able to do anything. There's times for planting seeds in the ground and growing crops. If you plant at other times, you're not really necessarily going to get any yield until the time of the the actual to the time that's right for the seed to start getting in the ground. And I guess that's around spring or whatever else. I'm like, I hate being wrong about any little detail about anything. So sometimes I hang up if I want to talk about something because I don't like to say anything that oh, Jesse's an idiot. I don't know. I didn't mean to be talking about planting or whatever today, but yeah, I guess the spring. So
So timing is really important. Right place, right time, and take the right action. I went out to the field and I jumped up and down and I said, "Give me plants." That's not the right action. The right action is planting seeds, at the right time, right? Or the right action is, putting sperm into vicinity of egg so that a pregnancy can take place. There's a wonderful joke ultimately about inspired action and about taking action and sort of getting opportunity when it comes your way. And the joke goes, there's this guy and he's in a flood and he climbs to the top of his house and he is praying to God to save him. And after a little while, one of his neighbors comes over in a rowboat and he goes, "Hey, get in, John. I got you." And the guy goes, No, Steve, God's going to save me. So he goes, "Oh, all right." Then he leaves. And then a little while later, there's a military vessel and it's like larger and they throw him a life preserver. And he throws it back to them and he goes, No, God's going to save me. And they go, "All right." And they leave him. And then a little while later, there's a third offering that comes. A helicopter comes and throws down the ladder and, "Come on, we're going to save you." And, the water's up to his neck now. And he's like, "No, God's going to save me." So the helicopter eventually leaves and he's still praying for God to save him. And eventually he dies. So he goes up to heaven and he barges into God's office and he says, "What the hell, God? You made me look like a fool. I told everybody you were going to save me." And God turns to him and he says, "I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter." Now, when we want something and we have a vision in our mind of possibilities, we are opening ourselves up now to opportunity. Opportunity is going to come to us to get the things that we want. Those are the actions that we have to take. That is the inspired action. And I've got lots of examples about this. I made a whole bunch of notes here, so as I go down my list, I'll be able to sort of break this down in lots of different ways. But opportunity must be capitalized upon. The guy should have took one of those boats. I like to say, God doesn't have to tell me 3 times. God tells me twice. I notice that pattern. I noticed being told twice. I feel like, if you're taking the helicopter, you're really pretty thick-headed. Boat number 2, even if it doesn't line up with exactly what you thought things were going to look like. And that's the big thing. What's it going to look like? I'm praying to God, and God sends boats and helicopter. God's not coming down with sandals on and a robe and saving my ass. It may happen in a different way. Maybe God will come down in a robe and save your ass. And if he does, don't go, "Nah, God's not going to come down in a robe and say." He's right here, and he's offering, he's offering you a boat. He's offering you a plane. Get on God's plane. Don't deny the opportunities when they come up. And opportunities are coming up all the time. The bingo balls of opportunity are just like bubbling to the surface. Other people are coming into your life, opportunities to do things, to change locations, to change jobs. They're there, especially when you open yourself up to the possibility that they could be there, when you ask for them to be there, when you ask for a change, when you want to change. That's when you have to be sort of open and vigilant and not attack too hard or too soft, because we don't want to end up on the floor in the room, the long hallway where we threw the die, the dart, or way off to the right or way off to the left. We want to end up as close to the middle as possible, and it's hard. And society, makes it like, we have this collective consciousness where people think like that the universe isn't intelligent, but it is. And timing and the ebb and flow and the breath and the magnetism of people. When you say somebody, it's man's animal magnetism, somebody who's magnetic, that's a real thing. And that's happening in subtle ways all the time, bringing us in contact with people that we would rather not be in contact with if we believe that they're out there and that we're going to run into them. I have chosen to believe that there's good in all people, and I always get the best out of everyone. And in general, I always do. Occasionally I don't, and I don't lose my belief that I always get the best out of all people, because that belief really changed my life. When I started to believe that, it became my reality. And occasionally I will run into somebody or have a little bit of trouble, relatively minor, and I always sort of muck it up. Well, for some reason I had to go through that experience, whatever, and I go back to believing that I'm going to get the best out of everybody. And that's for you to do as well. But neither here nor there. Getting back to the inspired action. Now, essentially life is this moving platform, ebbing and flowing. And you don't jump at the right time, and you fly off the platform. You jump over the platform. You underjump. You fall under. You fall to your death. But there is a difference between educated guesses and inspired action. Now, in my life, I thought that I could beat the system with educated guesses. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second, that I could look at the field and plot out exactly what was going to happen, how I could win the game. And I did this in so many different ways and really ended up banging my head against the wall. Whereas my inspired action, that moment when lightning strikes your brain, that great moment in Hook with Bob Hoskins, he's playing Shmi and he's like, Captain, lightning has just struck my brain. That's inspired action. He's inspired and he tells Hook, and Hook goes, Shmi, I've just had this wonderful idea. Tomorrow, I'm going to make the children love me. It's not his idea, but inspired by Shmi, yes, that's right. That is a great idea. Now they're off to the races. When you lose your car keys, most of you have probably learned that eventually you stop looking and you just sort of wait to see if it just comes to you where they are, where they could be. See if maybe you just stumble upon them now all of a sudden. And it always seems to happen. Similar thing happens with names. Try as you might, I tried to remember the name. As soon as I stopped, I got the name. That's the name. This is inspiration, right? So when inspiration hits, there it is. Oh, inspired. You get an idea that's inspired. Believe in that. Don't lose track of that. I gotta do something is not inspired action. Okay? And I really would like to, encourage you all to dream a little bigger. Love isn't crazy. Anything that you love is worth dreaming about. All inspiration is divine. If you feel it, others will feel it too. Honestly, if it's in you strongly, it's in the world. I have I have a whole bunch of long-form YouTube videos teaching the universal laws, where, different things that I haven't said here or there. You can go check it out. It's on my YouTube channel at Blacklight District Studios, which is on YouTube. And you can find the 13 Universal Laws with Jesse Blaze Snider. And, I tell the story about Chucky. Think about Chucky, this little doll running around with a knife. My dad used to make fun of the whole concept. He said, it's a doll, kick it. And there's truth to that. And what if the guy who came up with the idea of Chucky had my dad whispering in his ear, D. Snider of all people, whispering in his ear, saying, it's a doll, kick it. This is the stupidest idea for a horror movie I've ever heard. Well, maybe he wouldn't have made Chucky. And honestly, no offense, Dad, and Mom, and I'm sure you have people in your life like this, people who are close to you, where you'll have an inspired idea, but the things that people say to you, they scare you away, and sometimes it's because you're not really good at communicating how good it can be or what you see. But like in the case of Chucky, this guy saw something there. He was like, the dolls are creepy. There's something here. I think people would be scared of dolls if I do it the right way. And then you got this huge multi-billion-dollar franchise probably at this point with Chucky and TV shows and all this stuff. So many hit songs are written like on a whim. It's like we wrote the whole album, and then we were fucking around in the studio because we just had a couple hours left and whatever, and we got this stupid idea, and we were all laughing, and we made this song, and it ended up being the first single. You hear that story so many times. Stories like that. I have so many stories like that in my own life of just, just something kind of silly happened, and we wrote something that we really liked, and and this was the inspiration, and blah blah blah. It happens all the time, and this is why I say, these universal laws. This is why these Freemasons and these Illuminati. This is why they are being taught this. This is the fundamentals of the universe. You can't escape this push and pull energy, this ebb and flow, this polarity that's happening. There's a rhythm to it all, and if you don't learn how to ride the wave through taking that inspired action, you're never going to hit the bullseye. The bullseye comes from getting into that flow state, getting inspired, and then following through and getting all that stuff done, as I'll hit on by the time we get to the end of this. So let's see. Sharing ideas as a child, hit songs written on a whim, catching waves, body surfing, timing. We were talking about this already. Everything is water. Your body is so much water, and the whole universe, like the natural state of things, is flowing like water. Is things dancing in cooperation, because everything is one, right? So if the one thing's trying to get there and you're in its way, theoretically speaking, there's sort of a either there's an impasse. You want to be there, and they want to be there, or there's the two of you guys coming to a accord, so that you guys can flow like water, and he can get past, and you can get past, and whatever it is you may have to do, so that could be the case. You come to that accord. This is the ebb and the flow of the universe, and you're either a part of that ebb and flow, and you're working with it, or you're not. A big part of this, which I've talked about now before, I think on the show, and how important that I need to get into it myself. I'll often follow a YouTuber named Victor Oda. I recommend his channel, and he does these energy reports. And his energy reports is essentially he's just paying attention to what's going on with solstices and changes of seasons and changes of sort of like galactic calendars, stars and planets and things like that, and what it does to our bodies, and the types of effects and the types of things that happen with us. There's a great quote that I've said before now: millionaires don't do their horoscopes, billionaires do. And that's because the billionaire has been taught these things that I'm teaching you, that this is really legit. And if you could really get into the flow of your personal horoscope, your personal energy, and the energy of the universe at large, to know when to start a project, when to rest, when to go on a vacation. Like, there are better times to do these things. There are times when your energy will be down. There's times when your energy will be up. If you are paying attention to these energetic waves as best you can, getting some sort of idea, whether intuitively or otherwise, and trying to go with your personal energetic flow, that is you working with the system. That is you riding the wave and not being kicked around by it. To this day, I'm so often being kicked around by the wave because in general, I just can't switch myself off of work mode. And even when I'm not getting a lot done, I'm still in that mode, just going, you're not getting enough done, work. And I do know that there are times when I need to take a rest or whatever else. Thanks to somebody like Victor Odo, I will eventually, turn on his channel and go, let me see what Victor's saying right now, and find out, okay, maybe I go easy on myself for a couple days till it feels right again, until it feels like easier to do the thing. At the same time, sometimes you have to get up and you have to do these things. Once you start these podcasts, I do every Wednesday and every Saturday, I do Cool's Geek Alive. Every Monday, I do, the Saturday show, I record some, I might record it after this. And every Monday, I do the music show. And now every Friday, I do everything they don't want you to know. And it's a big commitment. And granted, sometimes I will record shows ahead of time, or, I'll do whatever it is that I'll figure out so that I can live my life and stuff. But, sometimes I don't want to do the show. Sometimes I don't feel like doing the show or whatever, but I've committed to a thing, and that's the thing. The inspiration to do the thing in the first place is the impetus, and then you have to continue to do the thing. I'm going to do a show about this. I want it to be, about all my favorite bands, so I can help turn people on to the favorite bands, and I got a title for it. It's this, these were all the things that inspired the thing, but then I have to follow through with it. So, everything's water. Comics, BD Dan DiDio, Twilight. So, in comics, I'm a huge comic book fan, and I really, I'm not trying to like pat myself on the back, but I'm an incredible writer. I've gotten there by studying, and I study all sorts of writing, and I've just done all sorts of writing all my life, and I've gotten very good at it. And you think, I'm good at this. I'm good at this. That's going to matter. Being good at this. This is why I'm allowing myself to call myself an incredible writer and stuff, because it doesn't matter. I am, and it means a lot of things when given the ability to do anything. But that isn't generally the case with the ebb and flow of the universe. I'm going into comics and I'm trying to work for Marvel and DC. I have a great idea for Blade. I have a great idea for some original project for them, like The Watcher, or turning Ghost Rider into a motorcycle club, calling it Ghost Riders. I have this really unique and cool idea that would be great for them. However, they're not looking for that. So those times where I've tried to sort of like calculate the best possible move, it's never worked out. The Blade pitch that I gave to Marvel, I got these incredible compliments on it at the time, that really like meant nothing in the long run, because I wanted the job. I wanted to do a book. I didn't want to get complimented. And they were like, it was one of the best pitches they'd ever received, but they didn't ask me for this pitch. I submitted this pitch. I calculated that they needed to do something with Blade. Blade was on the shelf. These movies, people like the character. They should be publishing Blade. And I put together a fucking great calculation of what a Blade comic book should be at Marvel Comics, what people would really jive with, something that would really stand out on the shelf. And because they didn't come to me, timing wasn't right for them, I came to them. They were like, okay, we're going to submit this to the higher-ups at the Marvel retreat in 7 months. Well, guess what? 7 months from there, another office had already decided to do something with Blade, and now Blade was off the table. He wasn't available to me, and I couldn't do the book. However, I just so happened to be at the comic convention in LA, and I just so happened to run into Dan DiDio, and Dan DiDio just so happens to be friends with my good friend who had passed away, and who had, promised me to introduce me to him one day or whatever. And I go, Dan DiDio, I'm a comic book writer. I'd love to write for DC Comics one day. And we've got a mutual friend. And I just kind of go, hey, Dan, I'm Jesse Blaze Snider. I want to introduce myself. I'm actually was really good friends with Dane Hall before he passed away. And he's like, oh, Dane Hall, I know Dane. We go way back. I love Dane. Was so sorry to hear about him passing away. I was like, yeah, I know. I said he and I were working on a really cool geek culture TV show at the time, and it was devastating to find out. I didn't even find out until like 3 months later, because we would kind of like talk every few months as we were bringing things together. And he's like, what are you doing here? Just a fan? And I said, oh, I write comics. I've been writing for Marvel right now. And he goes, well, why didn't you come over and write for us? I just happened to bump into him on a con floor. Just so happened we had a mutual friend. Just so happened. And actually, I'm misremembering. I was holding things. That was how me working as a comic book writer came up. And I had bought some things to commemorate my Marvel Comics Presents work that was like the first work I'd sold to Marvel. A poster and I think a statue. And he was like, oh, what you got there? All this Marvel stuff kind of thing. And so I happened to be holding these things to commemorate my work. And I go, oh, well, I just published my first work at Marvel, and I was been excited, and I got some things in commemoration of the thing. So it was very happenstance, and there it is. It came together, and shortly after that, I did an audition book for them. But shortly after that, Ian Sattler, a different editor, and him were in an office, and they were talking about the Twilight books and how popular they were, and they wanted to do something like that at DC. And then Dan had met me recently, and Ian, I think, was the one maybe who had overseen my audition books that I did. I did a Batman story, an inventory story. It was great. It got drawn, but it'd be locked in the vault at DC and never to be found again, unfortunately. It was a great story. April Fool's Day special with the Joker. And Dan and Ian were like, we need somebody to write a vampire romance at DC. And then I ended up creating it for them. They brought me in. They thought of that. There was my great script pitches. The pitches that I pitched were so much better than that fucking Dead Romeo book that I did for them. Even though I did my best on it and lots of things, whatever. But conceptually, I built something that was fucking perfect for Marvel. And this shit, never went anywhere. This calculated thing, but it was right place, right time, taking advantage of opportunity when it came. When it's right, it's right. Difficulty is an illusion. If it needs to be this way, it has to be like this. It has to be like that. I'm learning that so much in my life right now. Needing it to be a certain way when it's not is just like the fuck, it'll be the bane of your existence. When you're working with what you're given, when you're allowing opportunity to come, that's when things work. When you have writer's block, it's not good to go bang your head up against the wall and just, what are my ideas? It's good to go out bowling with your friends. It's good to go read a book. It's good to go watch a movie. It's good to go on a date. It's good to go do something else and then come back. Once you feel inspired, it's great to act on that inspiration. Don't be inspired and go like, oh, I'll write it down. Like if you can, act. When you have energy to do something, like do it, get it going, get started. Don't be afraid to start. The job that I got a while back, I needed a job. I was just looking for something for some extra money, and I wanted it to be something that was spiritually in alignment with me. A lot of my spiritual guidance has been that I have to sort of focus on the things that I do, my specialties, as a speaker, as a writer, as a musician or an actor, but I'm also a spiritual, I don't like to say spiritual teacher, but like a spiritual reminder, a reminder of the spiritual reality. I realized I could go on a spiritual job maybe. And maybe there was some spiritual jobs that were possible. I do tarot reading and, there's a lot of different things that, I've done that I could do some of these things. I could be benefit to a spiritual shop and I could be working on things that I like. And maybe I could learn about stones or something like that. Some more of the things that I wanted to learn about. So the inspiration at the time included going to look for on Facebook and see if there was a spiritual community. Sure enough, there was. Sure enough, when I went on, whenever it was that I was able to, there was a person who had just posted that they had a store, Tranquility Within, which is where I filmed those universal law classes at. And I did a whole bunch of different things there out of the back of their place, and I did tarot readings, and I did some hours there, just helping people and stuff because I liked it. Open spiritual people were coming in, and and you could give sort of a lot of information to people. I love sharing information. It's not so much that I like to teach anybody. It's but I learn things and I try to learn a lot and be able to have a lot to share and a lot to talk about. And so I really enjoyed that. And it gave me an excuse to learn about stones, which I really wanted to learn about stones a lot more for a while. So now I'm a bit of a stone guru in my own way, because I had that experience there, and it all came from me just having an inspiration. I didn't know what to do. I needed some extra money. I got the extra money. I got something that was in alignment with me that fit great, for me. I have some similar things going on right now where I'm like, all right, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that the answer exists, and I'm going to go about my life, and I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to do things that make me happy, and I know that it's all going to fall into place. So, I recommend you do the same thing. So let's see. Job, spiritual source, searching for musicians. Oh, there's another one. This is another great story. And again, just giving it some personal, putting some of my personal anecdotes to these stories, because I do think that it shows the perfection of that divine inspiration. It's like, look at the scenario that I was in. It was very specifically this. So in this scenario, I got two of the perfect musicians, the best musicians that I personally could have hoped for, despite so often getting the musicians that, I don't know, were plaguing me a little bit. And, and this is the thing that I say, why I kind of put a little push on the thing of, I don't know, maybe there is a girl for you if you're a gay man, or a boy for you if you're a lesbian. It's not so much that's like I'm like trying to peer pressure you to choose that, other than it'd be nice to see what your baby looks like if you're not going to have one. I love babies. But there's a rule in feng shui that goes, if you want a new piece of furniture, you get rid of the old piece of furniture, and you basically wait for the new piece of furniture to show up, or the opportunity for the new piece of furniture to show up. So I just sort of say, who knows what might show up? And I've kind of gone both ways on that. Not that I've ever actually really had a relationship with a guy or anything, but to some degree, I was open to the idea that, well, I don't know, perhaps some boy might come along and sweep me off my feet. I don't know. I don't know that that's not possible, whatever. And I do think that sort of going barrier is an overcorrection. That's what I'm saying, ultimately. Putting up a barrier is an overcorrection. Be open. And whatever is natural and is right will find its way to you, I believe. And whatever is natural and is right, nobody should be fucking judging you about, or whatever, whether it be a gay relationship or straight relationship. It doesn't matter. But you should always be open to whatever the universe might send when you stop searching. I did this with, I found the girl of my dreams when I got off of fucking Tinder or Hitch or whatever the fuck it was that I was using at the time. And it was like the second time I had used one of these dating apps, and I found them to be so unnatural. I found like I was like reaching for this thing, and then I was like, I'm done with this. And then I just was like, I put out a post on Facebook looking for friends in my area, and I ended up meeting somebody who I fell in love with. Really cool, really simple. And there was a similar thing that happened with this musicians, because now the trouble that I have with musicians is a lot of times people will know who my father is, and they drawn to celebrity, and are there motivated in sort of the wrong ways. I'll get like a lot of people reach out to me, and I'll be like, oh, lots of people want to whatever, but it's not because they listen to my music and they know that I'm talented, or they see me on the same level or whatever. It's a lot of the wrong reasons, really, why they're drawn to me and they're reaching out to me. And now, I didn't have necessarily a full calculation of this even until I did this the right way. I was inspired one day as I was thinking about putting together a band that I was going to make a post on my Facebook very specifically about how I'm not having fun anymore making music, and I want to get together with people who want to have a good time doing this and are willing to put in a little time and a little effort, leisurely, and in a fun way to do something great, and eventually make money or whatever it might be, but put in the time to get to know each other and get tight and like have fun doing it the way that we did when we were in fucking high school and stuff. Now, the responses that I got to this post were awesome. And in particular, two people who I don't know how we ended up following each other or whatever it was, maybe, or, I think maybe somebody retweeted it or reposted it on Facebook or something. But the two guys that found it, not only had they actually known each other, this guy was the son of a kind of friend of his, not like a really good friend, but like a friend, that somebody that they knew each other. They were both music teachers. Neither one of them knew that my father was my father. And both of them absolutely were responding to my message from my heart about how I felt about music. And that I was like, it makes me want to cry right now. That I felt it. I felt so strongly. this thing. And from this strong desire to meet some people who wanted to get together and play music for fucking fun, and not like it was a fucking business, because inspiration doesn't come from nose to the grindstone. We'll grind it out. No, great things don't come from that. You have to sort of trick yourself into great things. You have to create space for magic to happen. And it's easy when you're young and you're idiots and you're hanging out in your fucking garage and you're making music. It gets harder when you have a wife and kids and you have to feed them. But it's important. And my inspiration said, put the word out there and you'll find the people you're looking for. And I did. And I'd put the word out there that I was looking for musicians so many times. And I'd never found these guys. Nobody liked these guys. I found a lot of the same types of guys. Guys who thought that on some level this was a real opportunity. So they were fighting for it, but they were fighting for it for the wrong reasons. A lot. I've worked with a lot of wonderful people. It's not everybody. And I've lucked into wonderful people over and over and over again. Like my drummer Ben, and he and I are both fans of comedy music, and a similar sense of humor with a lot of that stuff, and I am very grateful. But a lot of times putting together bands and trying to get projects going, I've had the same problem over and over again. But here, the two perfect guys being led by my inspiration. I had a really weird one. I was being led by my inspiration, and I'm these are the ways that these things can happen. And I'm going to give you a ridiculous scenario in a second. But I was sleeping with my babies and, putting them to bed. When I go out me and my ex are divorced, so I'll actually, usually I get out of bed and I'll go sleep somewhere else because they kick me. But there's a bed or two in that house that's big enough to sleep with them. And they had fallen asleep, and the show that we were watching was over, and I couldn't sleep, and I was going to get a snack or something like that. And before I go, for some reason, I get this very minor inspiration to just put something on, and Perfect Storm's on, just as a little background noise for them so they don't wake up when I'm there and I'm coming back and I eat my snack or whatever it might be. Perfect Storm ends up being the fucking perfect movie for the moment that I'm going through at that time. It was really just a rough moment where I was dealing with a lot of feelings of being away from my kids and not knowing if they were going to be able to understand what was happening and how it was going to affect them, and being so worried about so many things. And I don't remember all these things at the time, but it wasn't a movie that I necessarily would have put on. I'd seen it before. I'm not a big drama guy, but I just was inspired in the moment real quick to put it on. I didn't think I was going to watch it. And I came back and I was sucked into it. I watched the whole thing, and it was very cathartic and very important for me to watch. My dad, this is a great one. My dad blundered in to the perfect apartment across the street from my mom's school that she was going to, FIT, in New York City. And this was unheard of. It is so difficult to get a place. Everybody will tell you how difficult it is to get a place in New York City, especially a place in a location that you want. Pick the location. My dad literally went to the school, not a thought in his head about it being difficult, looked across the street, walked over to those places, went, "Hey, I'd like to rent an apartment." They said, "Oh yeah, we just got an availability." And that was it. He got the apartment, and he had an apartment. That is divine timing. That is inspired action. I love this girl. I want to live by her. I'm going there right now. I'm going there. Let's see. There's an apartment building across the street. I'll go see if there's any availability. Hey, there's availability. Boom. Ding, 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 ding. Inspired action, inspired action, inspired action. The inspired action doesn't even have to be so deep like that. I've had lots of success as a voiceover actor just because I wasn't putting a lot of doubt into the process. I didn't necessarily care about voiceover. It wasn't the thing that I was training to do all my life, or hosting shows. I wasn't, that wasn't really important to me. But it seemed oh, well, that'd be fun, or that'd be cool. So, I was into it, and I was willing to take the action to do it, and I wasn't in the way, and I was good at it. So it all fell in place, and that came together. Meanwhile, though, things that I was calculating like a motherfucker, trying to prove that I was one of the great comic book writers, which I am. I could have been. It's so much of it's there's plenty of people who could have been and would have been, given the right opportunities, and I'm one of them. And now I've gone off and I do things independently, and my independent stuff's really cool, and I'll continue to do really cool independent stuff, and maybe one day I'll do some stuff if they decide they want to have me do something over there, because I've got ideas that I like. But I can take. I can do the inspired ideas that I have now, and I can do them all my way, and I can get the really good ideas across the board, because, my new idea is, hey, what if there was a company where all these little troubles that go into making great things for these companies weren't there? And that's, essentially the principle behind my company, which is my inspired action. And now it's me following through and taking action over and over with independent books. Our first book was called King of Kings, and we did actually, my first book was called King of Kings, and it failed on Indiegogo. And I was originally planning on funding it myself with voiceover money, and then I ran out of money. And then we got shadow banned on Indiegogo, which was why it failed. And then we ended up raising $6,000 on Kickstarter a few years later. And then we came back with Fucking for Our Future, our newest book, comedy book. It's not really an erotic book. It's kind of like a joke of an erotic book. It's very funny, though, but there's nudity and stuff. Fucking for a Future, and we made $12,000. It's you learn and you grow, and you take that inspired action, and you keep going and taking the action. And a lot of this is, there's lots of little bits of inspiration along the way, but sometimes you don't necessarily have inspiration. You know what you're supposed to do, and you got to keep doing it. Okay, so once you get in there, I want it to be the last thing I say on this show. Of once you get handed the baton, run with the baton. All right, so don't let others make you forget your divine inspiration. When you get divine inspiration, you've had an inspired idea, and you go and you share it with friends or family, and they doubt it and they neg it, and they if that starts happening a lot, stop sharing information with the people. Don't let people neg your shit. Don't let people take you out of your high-flying disc, as Esther Hicks, the channeler who teaches about laws of attraction. She's great. You should dig into her, Esther Hicks and Abraham Hicks, laws of attraction. Your high-flying disc is important. When you feel inspired, when something's making you feel hungry to do something, when you feel inspired to do something, when you feel energy behind something, remember, it's not just you. That means there's an energy that exists in God, in the infinity of energy and consciousness, and you need to follow through with those sorts of ideas. Expectations. Try to keep them neutral, open. Anything is possible at any times. There was a great thing that I saw Bashar talk about on my brother Cody's new podcast, and they're on TikTok, and there are a whole bunch of places, but it's called Acid for Squares. They got a great new TikTok. Bashar is a very famous channeler, one of the most famous channelers, and Bashar came on and he was talking about manifesting things, and he was like, you got a plan, you have an inspiration, and he says, do you think you can do that in 10 years? And the person says, yeah, I think I can do that in 10 years. So you think you can do it in 8 years? He said, yeah, I think I can do it in 8 years. He says, you think you can do it in 5? He says, yeah, I think maybe I could do it in 5. And Bashar says, the moment you think, well, maybe I can do it, that's as good as you can do it. That's the limit. Your faith only goes up to, well, yeah, maybe I could do it in 5. That's going to be the roof of where you can go. But if you choose to believe, as I now choose to believe, that at any time, at all time, things can happen. Money can come. Your life can change. Opportunity can knock. You just have to be ready to take the action when those moments occur. When that wave slides in, it's time to go. Anything is possible at any time. And the rowboat may get you to the speedboat, and you may have to swim in between. But, it's just about following those things and not, recognizing that God can disguise itself. The infinite intelligence can disguise itself in many ways. So make sure you are open enough to recognizing the boats, recognizing the opportunities when they come your way. And also, don't hold on to the boats. There's a great story about this guy. He gets to a river. He can't get across, but he sees all these trees around. He ends up building himself a boat. He takes the boat across the river. He looks at the boat. He goes, I spent a lot of time on that boat. He said, maybe I should take it with me. And he lifts up like all these trees worth of fucking wood, and he's carrying it around on his back. Should you take the boat with you? No. So you're going to build mechanisms and things to deal with situations and things, but you're not carrying these things around with you at all times, and whatnot. You're not learning one lesson for forever. Everything is as you need it, and that is how you ebb and flow like the water. I wanted to share a little story about raining money. And this is for limiting yourself, so don't limit your beliefs, of what's possible. The bigger the bigger the pool of what is possible for you, the more possibility you might have to take inspired action. The smaller the pool of your belief of what's possible, the more limiting things will be. I had an idea for this like kind of song and this story called "It's Raining Money," and it came from me thinking, well, money's not just going to fall from the sky. And in this deep meditation, my spirits were communicating with me pretty clearly. And they basically just said, well, why not? Why couldn't money fall from the sky? And I thought about it for just, a moment. And I was like, well, I suppose actually there are a few scenarios where money could fall from the sky. Whether it was falling out of a building for some reason, or what if there was a plane loaded with money. And that's the thing. I ended up writing this song about this plane that set out one day and it was loaded with drug money. And this pilot ended up having to abandon the plane because it was going to crash or whatever. And he goes to jump out the door, and the door to this plane's open, and the plane's spinning, and now the money is flying out of the plane all over into the universe, and it's raining money. That could happen. There are all sorts of scenarios that you could imagine, like it raining money, that could happen. And then there are even, get this, lots of scenarios that you can't possibly imagine. Like that guy couldn't possibly imagine that God would send 2 boats and a helicopter, but he did. So you got to be open to that when those things are coming along to you. You got to be able to say, oh, okay, I see. I see what's going on here. This is an opportunity. And this will lead me to this bicycle. And the bicycle is going to lead me to somewhere else. Remember, and the better you get at recognizing opportunity when it comes and being able to see that this is the thing I want in disguise. Because so often that's the thing that blocks people away. The thing they want is usually in disguise as something else. And being able to see that if I just keep going down this path, I'm going to get where I want to go, that can be tough on people. So, you got to try to learn to recognize, and I think that is really a skill, and it comes from a lot of wisdom. But, you don't have to keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. You can learn how to ride the wave and get to getting on top of it. Inspired action versus religious dogma. And, I want to talk about, sometimes people you read the Bible and you're like, Jesus is the way. And that's great. And Jesus is the way in lots of fashions. And there's so much deeper ways to find out about Jesus and things you can find out about Jesus, that things that he taught that fly in the face of a little bit of dogma, a lot of the dogma, I should say, that runs in the Bible. And Jesus, Yahweh, is a wonderful person to study. And there are so many wonderful spiritual teachers. I hope on some small level I'm a wonderful spiritual teacher. But I don't only want you to listen to me. I don't want you to just Jesse is the way. No, Jesse is not the way. Jesse is the way because he learned from so many people. And even think about Jesus. It's like. He had parents, he had influences, he had people. Those things shape a person, and a person will be inspired by so many of the circumstances that they live through and whatnot. But there is so much influence, positive influence in the world, and positive influence to be had. Every person on some level is a Messiah figure to you. For you. It can be. You can view Robin as the Messiah. Robin Williams as the Messiah of comedy, if you'd like. Whoever has the pinnacle of a certain gentleness, the pinnacle of a certain strength, the pinnacle of a certain intellect, the pinnacle of a certain creativity. There's all sorts of different vibes and energies that different people hold, that we hold them in our hearts because we love and appreciate them. Whether it be your grandfather or your brother or somebody you look up to, who you love what they're about and who they are as a person, and it teaches you. So let's see. So don't get lost in the inspired action. I found and then just get lost in one religion for forever. There's all sorts of wonderful religions. I encourage everybody to be very open and humble about all religions. And you take Christ into your heart, and you take the Gaia into your heart, and you take the Buddha into your heart, and and really view everything as equally godly and equally capable of greatness. And then you don't limit anything. Wouldn't it be wonderful to live in a world where everybody was as to Christ? Yeah, so let's not limit it as to say that that's impossible. Wouldn't it be nice? We can all do it. Let's think like that. Isn't that a non-limiting belief? And isn't the other thing a limiting belief? And it's just a belief. They're all just beliefs in a mind. Waiting, acting, or surfing. So yeah, too little, too much, or just right? Flow state brings inspired action to life. We talked about this a little bit in the beginning. People who are climbing mountains and, getting into flow. That's a good way to learn how to get into inspiration. Sitting, once I get into my chair and I start writing lyrics and stuff, if I'm vibing and I'm laughing and I'm having a good time, I'll just get into the flow state. All the lyrics come out of me. Then they're perfect. When I sit there and I have to hammer them out more mechanically and I'm sitting there writing them down, it doesn't flow. It's not so great. So try to invite that state in your life, and bring yourself to that state as often as possible, and look at your life and see, where do I get that state? Where do I arrive at that state? Does playing tennis help me get to the flow state? Because getting into flow and moving into that place of inspiration is very important for everybody. Ultimately, just have pure faith. The purer the faith, the quicker you'll arrive at all your desires, right? Bashar said, at 5 years you said maybe. If you just thought, yeah, I could get it done tomorrow. I can get this done soon. This can be done. This can be done. I'm ready to get this done. That's it. I'm ready to get this done. And then what? You follow through. The man who moved a mountain began with small stones. Or you can think of it as a sculptor, slowly chipping away everything that is not the end result, slowly revealing the perfect sculpture beneath. And remember, when the timing is right, imperfect action is better than inaction. Okay? When the timing comes in, when things come around, when opportunity's there, when the girl of your dreams is standing before you, you may feel awkward. It might feel scary, but there she is. Go do it. Get on it right now. This is the time. This is the last thing that I'll talk about here, because this is really true, and it gets to the heart of everything. Most people in life, they have trouble with everybody. So much of that trouble can often come from not addressing a thing at the right moment, because they don't know when the right moment is. And the right moment is right when it happens. Because after it happens, and now it becomes a thing that disturbed one individual, and the other individual doesn't know. The longer time passes, by the time this thing finally comes out, and usually it comes out because they get aggravated again down the line, and then it's, you've done this before. You've been upset with me this entire time. Now the other person gets handed this big bill of energy. You've been putting all of this energy into being upset with me at the time? Son of a bitch. When is the time to take inspired action when you're having a bad moment? At the moment you're having it. Otherwise, it just becomes a thing that doesn't get addressed until a long time later, and it'll blow up in your face. Similarly, but slightly different, when the opportunity comes along, you seize it. When Marvel comic, when I had written a story for Spider-Man Unlimited, which was a comic book that they were trying out new writers, 11 pages, these stories. I submitted it, and I found out that the book had been canceled. I was devastated. A few days later, my friend Chris Sotomayor was a colorist. He called me. He told me that a different editor who I had met, that he could give me his email for, he had been put in charge of a new book. Or actually, I think it was the same editor, Andy Schmidt. Shout out to Andy Schmidt. They were taking 7-page submissions for a new Marvel Comics Presents book. So I immediately took action and I wrote a story. In this case, because I had this information and I didn't want to be late, I took a story that was an existing story that I had that I thought was one of the best stories I'd ever told, and I adapted it into this cool little Spider-Man story. But a month later, or whatever amount of time later, when I got back my script, the guy, he wasn't really feeling it. It didn't make sense to him, largely because he hadn't read some of the things that had been going on at Marvel at the time, because I was doing some things that had happened, and based on what he said in the email, it was clear that he hadn't read the recent transpiring stories, and I didn't want to argue with him and accuse him of not having read the thing, and so I just literally flipped it in the other direction, and in 24 hours, literally 24 hours, I turned out another script. The door was open. I had an opportunity. This was my time to take action. I took action. I took action. I took action. I took action. I did Spider-Man Unlimited. That didn't go anywhere. Blew up my face. I got, boom, hey, there's a thing over here. Okay, I'm going to put something together. This calculated thing I tried, it didn't work. All right, I'm trying again. I still got an opportunity. He says you can send me something else. So I was like, all right. And I wrote this great, funny Deadpool story. It was complete opposite of the other thing that I'd written, which was I was trying to win an Oscar for writing comics. They have those. They're just not called Oscars. And it was kind of highfalutin story or whatever, and heartfelt and drama and whatever. It was weird, but it was cool. It was really good. But it was very different than what I submitted then. I just submitted the diametrically opposed thing. Let me see if I can get this. And a month after that, he hit me back, and I got published. I got hired. So, that action. The inspiration is going to get you there. The action is going to get you across the finish line. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. We will continue with the universal laws unless something big like, needing to talk about weather control or something like that comes up until we're done with the universal laws class. Because I'm telling you, this is the baseline for the fucking Illuminati and the Freemasons. This is the stuff that they're learning. And the more seriously you can take this, the better. Next week, we'll probably be learning about the law of cause and effect. Then we'll be seeing about the law of rhythm, correspondence, law of infinite compensation, and then the law of attraction, which really I like to call the law of attracting creation, because everything in the universe is inside you, because you're creating your universe individually. I'm creating my universe individually. It's a very interesting universe we're living in, and I can't wait to talk to you about it more in the future. How about next Friday on another fucking awesome episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know? Love you guys. See you next time.